Donald Trump stood in front of cameras this week and told the world the war was winding down. He used words like progress and productive. He spoke about conversations happening behind closed doors, about a deal taking shape, about an end coming into view. And while he was saying all of that, Iran launched its 79th wave of drones and missiles toward Israel. Not the first wave, the 79th. That number does not belong in the same sentence as the word ending. And yet here we are, watching an administration describe de-escalation while simultaneously rushing thousands of troops toward a conflict that by every measurable indicator is moving in exactly the opposite direction. So today we are going to do what the official statements refuse to do. We are going to look at what is actually happening, not what is being said about what is happening, because those two things have never been further apart than they are right now. Start with the troops, because the troops tell you everything. The United States is currently moving somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 additional military personnel toward the region. That is not a precautionary repositioning. That is not a routine rotation. The 82nd Airborne Division is among the units being deployed, a rapid reaction force specifically designed for high-intensity combat operations that require speed and firepower on short notice. Multiple Marine expeditionary units are moving alongside them. These are not the kind of forces you send to a region where peace talks are producing results. These are the kind of forces you send when the people doing the actual planning, not the people standing at podiums, have looked at the battlefield trajectory and decided the situation is about to demand a heavier American hand. The gap between what a government says and what a government does is always where the truth lives. Right now, the United States government is saying de-escalation and doing force projection. Trust the doing. To understand why the troops are moving, you need to understand what is happening to Israel's defenses. And the picture there is considerably darker than what is making headlines. Iran's 79th wave was not a repeat of previous attacks. The composition shifted. Iranian commanders have been systematically studying Israeli interception patterns, identifying the gaps, the reload windows, the radar geometries, and adjusting their strike packages accordingly. What changed in recent waves is the incorporation of cluster munitions into the assault architecture. These are not precision instruments. That is precisely the point. Cluster munitions disperse across wide areas, forcing air defense batteries to engage multiple simultaneous low-value targets at high cost. Every interceptor fired at a cluster munition is an interceptor that cannot be fired at the ballistic missile arriving 30 seconds behind it. Israel's air defense network is under a pressure it was not designed to sustain indefinitely. The interceptors being used to stop these waves cost between $1 and $3 million each. The drones being used to exhaust those interceptors cost a few thousand. The Israeli Air Force has begun rationing. That word, rationing, should stop you cold. When a military force starts rationing its defensive interceptors, it means the stockpile is being consumed faster than it can be replenished. It means decisions are being made in real time about which incoming threats get intercepted and which ones are allowed to run their course and hope for the best. That is not a defense posture. That is a triage posture. And triage only happens when the situation is already beyond what normal management can handle. Dimona is in that threat envelope now. Tel Aviv is in that threat envelope. These are not peripheral targets. Dimona is the beating heart of Israel's nuclear infrastructure, a facility so sensitive that its mere targeting represents an escalatory threshold that would have seemed unthinkable 2 years ago. Iran is not just targeting it. Iran is targeting it repeatedly, probing the defenses, measuring the responses, learning what it takes to get something through. Now go back to the peace talks, because the gap between the American account and the Iranian account is not a matter of interpretation. It is a direct, flat contradiction. Trump's team has described productive back-channel conversations with Iranian leadership. Senior administration officials have used phrases like meaningful dialogue and constructive engagement. The language is careful and deliberate, designed to project momentum toward resolution without making a specific commitment that can be held against them later. Iran's official response to this narrative has been equally deliberate. Iranian officials have stated plainly and repeatedly that no negotiations are taking place. Not stalled negotiations, not paused negotiations, no negotiations. The foreign ministry has not hedged this position. They have not left a diplomatic door open while playing hardball. They have directly denied the existence of the conversations that the American side is describing as promising. Two sides cannot both be telling the truth here. Either talks are happening or they are not. And the behavior on the ground, the 79th missile wave, the cluster munition shift, the continued closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the 6,000 troops now boarding aircraft, reads far more consistently with the Iranian account than the American one. Governments engaged in genuine de-escalation negotiations do not simultaneously restructure their strike packages to defeat their adversaries' interception rationing thresholds. That is not how diplomacy and warfare coexist when diplomacy is winning. The economic signal is telling the same story the military signal is telling. Oil has not come down. Despite every official statement about progress and process, the market has looked at this conflict and priced in continuation, not conclusion. Brent crude holding above $100 a barrel is not a bet on peace. It is a bet on prolonged disruption. Traders are not ideological. They are not political. They respond to probability-weighted outcomes, and the probability they are weighting most heavily right now is a conflict that runs longer and burns hotter than the official narrative suggests. The Strait of Hormuz remains functionally closed to non-Iranian commercial shipping. Insurance markets have not reopened that lane. The tankers are not moving. Every day that Strait stays closed is another day that the global energy system operates with a structural deficit that flows through to heating bills, fuel costs, and the price of anything that moves on a truck or a ship. The people feeling that are not feeling it because of a war that is ending. They are feeling it because of a war that is not. Here is the picture that emerges when you stop listening to the statements and start reading the signals. A military force is rationing interceptors. A rapid reaction division is wheels up toward a combat theater. A nuclear adjacent facility is being targeted in repeated strike waves. The strait that carries a fifth of the world's oil supply is closed, and the two sides cannot agree on whether they are even talking to each other. None of those things describe a war in its final chapter. Every single one of them describes a war in a dangerous and accelerating middle, a phase where the gap between what leaders say publicly and what military planners are preparing for privately has become wide enough to drive a division of airborne infantry through. Trump announced victory. Iran launched Wave 79. The question worth sitting with is not who is winning this war. The question is whether anyone involved has a clear picture of what winning actually looks like from here, because the troops moving toward the region right now suggest that the people making the real decisions have already answered that question, and the answer is not peace. This does not look like a war that is ending. It looks like a war that is just finding its next gear.